Hello，大家好，又係我高 B 哥啊！係時間提醒大家飲水啦，增添智慧，增添水分，智慧如水啊！好啦，嚟到錄片時間，2022年嘅12月3號啊，而家凌晨嘅12點幾。高 B 哥咧，頭先咧錄完嗰條影片之後咧，再直睇埋 last 呢條影片咧，跟住咧就想同大家講講，真係阿馬凱碩咧喺頭先嗰條影片，如果你冇睇睇翻啦，G1同埋 G2啊嚇，馬凱碩三部曲嘅 G1同埋 G2 就講咗啦，中國啊有咁長嘅歷史，佢哋咧已經經歷過咧無數咁多種唔同嘅政治體制同埋咧管治方式，夾雜埋中國嗰個特有嘅情況，包括咗咧係我哋嗰個地域嘅廣闊啦，我哋嘅人種。同埋咧人數嘅差異，即係譬如咧，我哋有成14億人，你美國同埋西方即係歐洲啊，兩邊加埋都係得個7-8億人，都唔夠一半啊！啱啱先得個一半，所以個管治本身就唔同，再加埋咧，我哋有咁多唔同嘅民族，再加埋啊，中國嘅地理位置嘅發展咧係比較咧就係逼埋晒一齊嘅，好中意咧聚埋晒一齊，咁所以咧喺裏邊咧管治上邊唔同。再加埋中國個體制咧，得到咗有效嘅認證，就係話咧用而家呢種咁嘅方式方法咧，對於大部分嘅人嚟講咧係最好嘅。咁已經解釋咗俾咧美西方嘅人聽下。好啦，到第3集呢個咧，就到有一個咧就叫做駁嘴嘅嘉賓啦，咁啊，但係其實其他嗰啲嘉賓咧都駁駁地嘴嘅，咁但係我覺得咧呢個係一個正面嘅駁嘴嚟㗎 ，OK 嗱，因為咧佢哋真心咁樣諗嘅，睇佢哋咧係真心咁樣諗，咁當然啦，馬凱碩已經話俾你聽，你淨成日睇埋晒咧美西方嗰啲咧所謂叫做咧輿論戰、謊言戰、信息戰，又或者咧故意將中國嘅形象咧扭曲咗、distort 咗，佢話嚇。扭曲咗，所以咧你誤解咗中國，咁佢係解釋咗中國嗰啲俾你聽，咁啊甚至乎咧舉咗例俾你聽。好啦，今次呢個咧都係駁嘴嘅少少嚇，不過咧我係覺得好正面喎，喺佢個角度真係覺得咧唔係咁樣睇。不過咧馬凱碩咧一開始咧喺個演講嘅時候咧就已經咧收咗佢一下，修理咗佢一下。OK，繼而咧去到最尾嘅時候咧。佢已經講咁中間嗰啲你哋自己睇啦，係咪？去到最尾咧，佢就話俾你聽，喂，你諗清楚先，中國有冇真係試圖過嚟改變你美西方嗰個體制先？佢有冇指點你話俾你聽？你哋行緊嗰啲我哋行過噶啦，行唔通噶。嗱，佢有冇指點你啊？佢直情咧自己行得通好，行唔通都好啦，佢都冇特意咁樣走出嚟咧指正。或者冇叫指正啦，或者叫做咧特登咧，好似懶係咧實力地位，我試過㗎啦，唔得㗎，你唔好咁樣做。佢冇喎，佢由你自己去摸索，係咪？因為咧中國咧始終都係奉行咧唔干涉他國嘅內政啊，呢個係好重要。咁啊，所以咧最後咧，馬凱碩咧俾咗個結論，佢就話：喂，其實唔使講咁多啊，人哋冇過嚟改變你嘅情況之下。你管好自己咪得咯，你就偏偏走去管埋人哋，要人哋咁樣，話嗰啲叫做咩國際標準啊、國際嘅規則啊，用規則啊作為秩序啊，全部都係你哋自己講嘅。問題就係話，你根本擺翻落去同樣嗰個狀況，就唔能夠咁樣嘅醫治啊，唔能夠咁樣去用嘅。正如一間公司，你自己每一間公司啊，唔好講到成個國家都有唔同嘅體制啦。你嗰個好大嘅，假設咁講啦，美國一間好大嘅公司，Walmart 咁先算啦，係嘛 ？OK，咁係咪就係等同佢去到咁大嘅時候，佢嘅管理模式又要惠康百佳跟佢一模一樣咁樣去做啊？係咪？根本你知道你唔係話你嗰個喺 Walmart 行得通、行得好暢順嘅，擺落嚟你呢個惠康百佳又係行得通、行得暢順噶嘛？所以體制咧係冇一個咧。標準嘅，唔係冇一個即係標準體制啊，係或者咧就冇一個叫最好嘅體制嘅，只有咧係適應自己國家、自己嘅人民最適合、最適應嘅咧，就係為之一個好嘅體制。好啦，嗱，跟住落嚟咧，last 一集睇下馬凱碩咧點樣幫我哋解釋下俾西方嘅人知道。好啦，去片。
censorship helps to keep the population happy, which is quite a statement for the media program of Konrad Adenauer Foundation. And I would argue against that. I don't believe that. I believe that censorship is maybe in order for a majority of the people, but if you think about the minorities, if you think about the Uyghurs, if you think about the Me Too activists, they suffer from censorship. That's the one side. The other side is that censorship also prevents a very important function of the media, which is to help accountability, to make sure that the government is accountable. So my question to you is, if you say the censorship is fine, where does accountability come from for the Chinese government, for Xi Jinping and his government? Because at least I believe that this is a very important mechanism in a country, that there's accountability for the government. Maybe you don't think that's true, but I'm really interested in your perspective on that.
You know, one thing I love about the English language is its precision. So when I said that censorship has not prevented the Chinese people from becoming happy, it doesn't mean that censorship has made the Chinese people happy. These are two very different statements, okay? It is true that there is censorship in China. It's also true that there's a lot of happiness in China. That's the reality that I'm describing. Now, I would prefer, like you, to live in a society without censorship, certainly. But that's a choice you want, that's a choice I want. Let the Chinese people choose what they want. And when you ask for accountability, I suggest you look at 4,000 years of Chinese history. When the emperor fails, right? He loses the mandate of heaven, and in one way or another, the Chinese people have overthrown bad emperors for 4,000 years, right? They've suffered from time to time, which is true. And if you look at the cycles of Chinese civilization, all I'm saying is, you want to understand China, why don't you look at Chinese history, okay? Now, the Chinese go through cycles, right? When they have bad years, they have 200 bad years. Guess what? The Chinese have just had almost 200 bad years. Now the Chinese are beginning 200 good years, of which 40 years have just happened. And whether or not there's censorship or no censorship, another 160 good years are coming. That's the reality. I'm not saying I approve of it. I'm saying censorship is not going to make a difference, right? Because the Chinese have evolved their own social and political contract. You may not like it, I may not like it, but they seem to like it. And I want to emphasize a key point. It's a bit arrogant for Westerners to tell the Chinese people, we know better than you do what is good for you. And in this book, I cite an American ambassador, Chas Freeman. He says, we in the West don't understand that China suffers a ratio of people to arable land which is among the tightest in the world. If the United States had the same ratio of people to arable land as China does, United States wouldn't have 330 million people. United States would have 4 billion people. And Chas Freeman says, if we in America, if we had 4 billion people, we would accept far more controls and restrictions than we do today, because when you're crowded, living together, you accept a social contract which is much tighter and more disciplined than Americans will accept. So I'm not suggesting we should become like the Chinese. I agree with Stefan, right? We should look after ourselves. We should create our own societies. China is not asking us to transform ourselves. All that China is saying is, our society is good for ourselves. You keep your society, and we'll live and work with each other. I think that's a perfectly reasonable statement.